The bright stars of the galaxy shone through the windows of the ship as it glided silently through the vastness of space. The human explorers had journeyed far from Earth to a distant planet. Their mission was one of peace and understanding, seeking to make first contact with an alien civilization. Commander Riley, a young officer with the United Exploration Corps, looked out the ship's window. He could hardly believe it. After years of training, his team was about to meet a species unlike any humanity had ever encountered. Their mission was to establish peaceful relations with the aliens and to learn from them. The planet they were approaching was known for its advanced technology, but its people had always been secretive. No one on Earth knew what to expect, but everyone knew that this moment would change history. The crew had spent weeks in preparation. Everyone aboard the ship was nervous. The officers practiced their speeches, the scientists fine-tuned their instruments, and the diplomats reviewed cultural protocols. Riley, however, was not focused on the mission as a whole. His thoughts kept drifting to the unknowns, the aliens themselves. What would they look like? Would they be kind? Would they even want to talk? As the ship descended into the alien atmosphere, Riley could feel the tension in the air. The crew gathered in the meeting hall, anxiously waiting for their first glimpse of the alien delegation. The doors slid open, and the room went silent. Standing in front of them was a tall figure, cloaked in dark armor. The alien wore a sleek helmet that covered their entire face, leaving only a shadowy outline visible. A sense of awe filled the room. The alien's presence was overwhelming, like a storm on the horizon. The figure stood still, not speaking, but observing. It was clear that this was no ordinary soldier or warrior. This was someone important. Commander Riley stepped forward, trying to steady his breath. He had practiced this moment 100 times in his mind, but now that it was real, he was unsure how to begin. The alien had not moved, not even to acknowledge their presence. "Greetings," Riley said, his voice steady despite the nervousness creeping in. "We come in peace, representatives of humanity, seeking a future of cooperation and understanding." The alien's voice, when it came, was calm and measured, yet it carried an unmistakable authority. "Your presence here has been anticipated," the alien said in a deep, melodic tone. "You will learn much about us in time, but for now, we shall begin with the customs of our people." The alien leader motioned with one hand, and the room fell silent. A few steps forward, the alien began to slowly remove their helmet. The room held its collective breath. Riley watched, his heart racing as the helmet came off with a soft hiss, and then the alien's face was revealed. The princess, for that was who she was, had features that seemed to defy the human imagination. Her skin shimmered with a soft, otherworldly glow, and her eyes were like twin pools of deep blue, filled with wisdom and mystery. She had an ethereal quality, like she didn't quite belong to this world. Her long, silken hair cascaded down. Her back and her delicate features were as beautiful as they were intimidating. Riley stood frozen, unable to take his eyes off her. The alien princess was stunning in a way that went beyond mere beauty. There was something captivating in her presence, a mystery that seemed to pull him in. For a moment, time felt like it had stopped. His heart pounded in his chest, and a soft whisper escaped his lips before he could stop himself. "Gorgeous!" The words were quiet, barely a breath. But somehow, the princess heard them. She turned her head slightly, and their eyes met. There was an intense moment of silence between them. The princess didn't seem offended. Instead, she tilted her head, as if intrigued by the human's reaction. The room was still, and Riley realized he had just broken a cardinal rule. He had spoken without thinking. Yet, something about the way the princess looked at him made him feel like he hadn't said something wrong. Her gaze softened, and there was a slight, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. "I see," the princess said, her voice still as calm and smooth as before. But now there was an unmistakable warmth in her tone. You find beauty in the unknown. Good. We are not so different after all. Riley blinked, trying to regain his composure. He had spoken out of turn, yet the princess seemed to have understood. The tension in the room eased just slightly, but he still felt the weight of her gaze on him. Her eyes held a mystery, an ancient knowledge that made him feel both humbled and awed. Behind the princess, the other aliens, who had been watching the interaction closely, seemed unfazed by the exchange. It was clear that they were used to such reactions. The princess's presence was one of authority, and yet there was an air of curiosity about her that Riley couldn't quite understand. As the princess stepped forward, Riley could feel the space between them closing. He had to remind himself that this was a diplomatic mission. This wasn't a personal encounter. It was about building bridges between their worlds. The princess raised a hand, signaling for the rest of the human delegation to come forward. Riley felt a tug at his thoughts as she moved closer, her eyes still locked on his. There was a connection between them, an unspoken understanding that neither of them had planned for, but one that could shape the course of their meeting. "Come," she said, her voice like music. "Let us speak, and I will show you who we are. Only then will you understand the true meaning of our visit." Riley nodded, still in awe, but grateful for the chance to move beyond the first impressions. There was so much to learn, and the princess was the key to unlocking the mysteries of this world. As they walked to the center of the room, Riley felt a sense of anticipation. This was just the beginning. He had no idea what would unfold in the coming hours. But he knew one thing for sure. This encounter would change everything. As the princess slowly removed her helmet, a wave of anticipation swept over the room. The sharp sound of the helmet's release echoed softly in the silence, and every eye in the room was fixed on her. Riley could feel his heart race as he watched, trying to steady his breathing. What he saw left him almost speechless. The princess's face, now revealed, was more beautiful than Riley could have imagined. Her features were delicate but powerful, with high cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and lips that seemed to hold an ancient secret. But it was her eyes that captured Riley the most. They were deep blue, like the ocean at night, reflecting the stars in their vastness. They had an intensity, a quiet wisdom that seemed to look straight through him. Her skin had a soft, almost glowing sheen, like polished marble under the light. It wasn't the kind of glow that made her seem unreal. It was the kind of beauty that felt natural and calming. Riley couldn't look away, captivated by her presence. He had expected an alien, but this was something different. Something far beyond any of the stories he had read. The princess's long, dark hair cascaded down her back in elegant waves. It shimmered slightly, like the night sky lit by distant stars. She looked like someone out of a dream, someone too perfect to be real. Riley could hardly believe that the leader of this alien civilization stood before him, not just as a leader, but as someone with such an otherworldly grace. She tilted her head slightly as she noticed Riley's gaze, and for a moment, they locked eyes. A flicker of something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. Then the princess's lips curled into the smallest of smiles, one that seemed to say, "I see you, human." Riley blinked and quickly cleared his throat, feeling embarrassed for staring. His mind raced. Was this how the other humans felt when they first saw aliens? Overwhelmed by the sheer beauty of something so foreign? Or was it more than that? It wasn't just her appearance. It was her presence. There was a strength about her, an air of confidence and mystery that commanded respect. But there was also a gentleness in her eyes that suggested she was more than just a figurehead. Is this How you greet all your guests? The princess's voice broke through his thoughts. It was soft, but with an undeniable strength behind it. Her words carried a tone of authority, but there was a warmth there, too. Riley quickly regained his composure. He had spoken out of turn before, whispering, "Gorgeous!" in awe. Now he had to keep the conversation going. He couldn't afford to mess up again. I apologize, Princess," Riley stammered. "I was not expecting such beauty." The princess's smile grew ever so slightly, though she didn't seem offended. In fact, her response surprised Riley. "Your reaction is not unwelcome," she said, her tone thoughtful. "I have not often seen humans respond this way. You are the first to show such admiration, without fear or hesitation. Many of my people have only seen humanity through the lens of our enemies. It is refreshing to see someone see us without prejudice." Riley nodded, understanding her words more than she knew. It was true. Humanity had long been viewed by some alien species as a young and aggressive race, a species that needed to prove itself. But in this moment, standing before her, he understood that it wasn't just about diplomacy or peace, it was about mutual respect. They were both explorers, both curious about each other's worlds. "I believe in showing respect to everyone I meet," Riley said, feeling a bit more confident now. "It's the only way to truly understand each other, right?" The princess studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Riley tried not to fidget under her gaze, but it was hard. She had an aura about her that made him feel both small and important at the same time. "I see that you are not like the others," she said, almost to herself. "You humans are an interesting species, brave yet fragile, proud yet still learning." Riley was about to respond when a voice interrupted from behind the princess. One of her attendants, a tall alien with glowing eyes and sharp features, stepped forward. "Your Highness," the attendant said, bowing deeply, "we are ready to begin the formal discussions." The princess turned her head, nodding slightly. "Thank you," she said, her tone signaling that she would soon return to her duties. But before she turned away, she looked back at Riley. "You are different from the others," she repeated softly. "I will remember your words." Riley's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea why those words felt so important, but something in her voice told him they were. As the princess turned to face her attendants, Riley realized just how much was at stake. This meeting wasn't just about making peace, it was about understanding. He had no idea how much this one encounter could change the course of history. But in that moment, he felt like he was standing at the edge of something much larger than he could comprehend. The princess led her attendants to the center of the room where the official discussions were set to take place. Riley joined his team, and they took their places at the table across from the aliens. As he sat down, he couldn't help but steal a glance at the princess again. She was now standing tall and regal, surrounded by her people, poised and ready to lead. But as their eyes met for a brief moment, Riley couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this meeting than just politics. The formal meeting room was now filled with tension. Riley sat across from the alien princess, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on his shoulders. On one side of the table, humans in their military and diplomatic uniforms sat quietly, preparing for the discussions. On the other side, the princess and her people stood with quiet authority, their armor and attire sleek and elegant, hinting at their advanced technology and long history. Riley stole a glance at the princess. Her eyes were focused, sharp, but there was a calmness to her presence that was almost unnerving. She sat straight, her posture regal, her expression neutral. Yet Riley couldn't help but notice the faint, soft smile she had offered earlier. He remembered her words. "You are different from the others." It was a strange feeling, knowing that such a powerful being had acknowledged him. The meeting began, and the representatives from both sides discussed the terms of their potential alliance. Riley was listening, but his mind kept drifting back to the moment when the princess had first removed her helmet. It was as if that single gesture had unlocked something inside him, an unexpected connection, though he couldn't quite put it into words. He knew, though, that this was more than just a diplomatic meeting. The way she had looked at him, the way she spoke, it all felt personal. The conversation shifted to the differences between their cultures. Riley, now fully engaged in the discussion, listened carefully as the princess spoke. "Our people," she began, her voice steady and calm, "have lived for thousands of years, isolated from others. Our civilization has learned to rely on our intelligence, our strength, and our technology to survive. We have had no need for alliances, but your kind, humans, have different ways. You fight, you struggle, but you survive." Riley listened intently. The princess's words made it clear. Her people were far older than humanity. They had reached a point where they could live without fear of conflict, without relying on alliances or support. Their strength came from their unity and their advanced technology, but it also seemed to come from something deeper, a long history of survival that had shaped their values. "In our world," the princess continued, "we have long valued wisdom and understanding. Violence is a last resort. We avoid it when we can, and we seek knowledge above all else." Riley nodded, trying to understand her perspective. He had heard about the advanced culture of the aliens, but this was the first time he had heard them speak of it so openly. It made him think about humanity's own history. Humanity had been built on conflict, war, and struggle, but also on discovery, creativity, and perseverance. He felt a pang of guilt for how much of humanity's past had been defined by violence. Could the princess see humanity as a violent, unpredictable species? The conversation turned to technology. Riley had expected the aliens to be far more advanced than humans. But the princess surprised him by saying, "Your technology is far more advanced than we initially believed. You have discovered ways to bend light, to travel vast distances in a short time. You have achieved things that we have not yet dreamed of." Riley was taken aback. I didn't know we were that advanced compared to you," he said, looking at the princess in disbelief. The princess looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are younger than us, but there is something in your kind that we do not have. The energy, the drive to push beyond boundaries. It is a dangerous trait, but also a powerful one. We, on the other hand, have become too comfortable in our ways." It was a compliment, but it stung in a way Riley couldn't explain. The princess's people had been so focused on maintaining their own culture, their own safety, that they hadn't pushed themselves to explore the unknown in the way humans had. Humanity's struggles had led to innovations, but it had also come at a great cost. Was the princess saying that the price of humanity's growth was worth it? Or was it that they had simply reached a point where they could no longer afford to be reckless? The tension between the two cultures was becoming clearer with each passing word. Riley could see how much the princess valued knowledge, understanding, and calmness. But for humans, conflict and struggle were part of their nature. It was how they had survived for so long. Could their differences be reconciled? As the meeting continued, the atmosphere shifted. Riley noticed a slight change in the princess's demeanor. She was no longer just a leader representing her people. She was also a person, someone who had her own doubts and fears about the future. In a moment of quiet, when the rest of the room was deep in discussion, she turned to Riley. "You said earlier that understanding is the key to peace," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the hum of the room. "But how do you understand a people so different from your own?" Riley paused, unsure of how to answer. The question was heavy. He had always believed that humanity was capable of learning from others, of growing and adapting. But this wasn't just about peace between nations or species. It was about two very different ways of life. two very different approaches to survival. I think, Riley began, choosing his words carefully. That understanding isn't about changing who we are. It's about finding the common ground, the things we share. We've all had struggles, all faced challenges, even if they're different. I believe we can learn from each other without losing ourselves. The princess studied him for a moment, her eyes piercing and intense. And if we cannot find that common ground? She asked. Then we keep trying, Riley said, his voice steady. We have to. There's no other way forward. For a brief moment, the princess's gaze softened. Riley could see the weight of her responsibility in her eyes, the fear that her people might be risking everything by reaching out to humanity. She was a leader, yes, but she was also just one person in a much larger, more complicated world. I hope you are right, human, she said softly. I truly do. The quiet of the meeting room was broken by the sharp sound of the alert siren. Riley's heart skipped a beat as the sound echoed through the halls. Everyone froze for a moment, and then panic began to spread. The alien princess, who had been sitting gracefully at the head of the table, stood up suddenly. Her expression shifted from calm to one of concern. What is this? She demanded, her voice firm but tinged with worry. Riley turned toward his team, his mind racing. An emergency alert. This was not supposed to happen. The aliens had promised safety, but something had gone wrong. It's coming from the human settlement, one of the officers called out from the corner. There's been a breach. The princess's eyes narrowed. A breach? She asked, clearly alarmed. From whom? Riley didn't have the answer, but his instincts kicked in. This wasn't the time for words. It was time to act. The peaceful meeting was falling apart, and he had to find out what was happening. We'll have to investigate, Riley said. His voice was calm but urgent. If there's an attack, we need to stop it before things get out of hand. The princess nodded sharply, her calmness returning. Lead the way. Without hesitation, Riley and his team hurried to the ship's exit, the princess and her guards following closely behind. The alien princess's people moved with efficiency, their sleek armor giving them an almost ghostly appearance as they navigated the corridors. Riley couldn't help but admire their discipline, but the situation was far too urgent to focus on that now. Outside, the sky was overcast, the usual bright sunlight now blocked by dark clouds that seemed to mirror the tension in the air. Human settlement lay in the distance, its buildings small but sturdy, with protective barriers in place. Yet now, smoke rose from several parts of the settlement, and distant shouts could be heard. Something was terribly wrong. Riley's team rushed to their vehicles, and the princess followed without hesitation. Her guards flanked her, moving swiftly as they prepared to leave the ship. Riley could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. They had come to this planet seeking peace, but now they were about to find themselves caught in a conflict. What do you think happened? The princess asked as she sat next to Riley, her voice calm despite the danger. Riley shook his head. I don't know, but whatever it is, we need to stop it quickly. As the vehicles sped toward the settlement, Riley thought about the situation. An attack wasn't something they had planned for. He had hoped to spend days, maybe even weeks, building relations and learning from the alien people. But now, that hope felt far away. If things weren't resolved, the fragile peace between humanity and the alien species could be shattered before it even truly began. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. People were shouting, running in all directions. Several buildings had been damaged and fires burned in some places. The humans and aliens alike seemed confused, unsure of what was happening. But Riley saw something that immediately sent a chill down his spine. A group of alien dissidents, members of a faction that had opposed the peaceful meeting with humanity, was clearly visible in the crowd. They were armed, their faces covered, and they had obviously come to cause trouble. "We need to get control of this," Riley said, his voice steely. "These people are trying to sabotage everything." The princess nodded, her face hardening. "This will not stand." She stepped out of the vehicle with purpose, her guards moving with her. Riley followed, but the princess moved ahead of him. She was the leader here. No matter what anyone thought, she was the one they would follow. Riley watched in awe as she strode toward the dissidents, her confidence and strength clear for all to see. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look back. One of the dissidents spotted the princess and immediately raised his weapon, aiming it at her. The crowd parted slightly, and Riley could see the fire in the dissident's eyes, but the princess wasn't afraid. She raised one hand, signaling her guards to stop. Then, with calm authority, she spoke. "Put your weapons down," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You are jeopardizing not only your future but the future of your people. If you continue, there will be consequences." The dissident leader scoffed, his voice full of anger. "You are weak, princess. Your people are weak. You believe in peace, but what has it brought you? Nothing. The humans will never leave. They will take what you give them, and then they will destroy you." Riley stepped forward, but the princess held up her hand, signaling for him to stay back. She stepped closer to the dissident, and for a long moment, they stared at each other. "You are wrong," she said calmly, but her words carried an undeniable weight. "Humanity will not destroy us. They seek peace. They seek understanding. If you cannot see that, then you are the one who is weak." The dissident hesitated, his weapon shaking slightly. For a moment, it looked as if he might lower it, but then he turned to his comrades, who were still lurking in the shadows, and with a growl, he signaled for them to attack. The princess's guards moved quickly, disarming the dissidents before they could even fire a shot. Riley watched in amazement as the princess's people worked with precision, capturing the troublemakers without any unnecessary violence. Within moments, the dissidents were disarmed and restrained. The princess's eyes remained calm, but Riley could see the determination in her gaze. She wasn't just leading her people, she was proving something to them. She was showing them that strength didn't come from fighting and violence. It came from standing firm in the face of adversity, from knowing when to act and when to remain calm. Riley couldn't help but feel a surge of respect for her. In that moment, he realized that this wasn't just about politics anymore. This was about something deeper, about humanity and the alien species finding a way to coexist, to overcome their differences, and to build something lasting together. The princess turned to Riley, her expression softening. "It is not over," she said quietly, "but this is a start." Riley nodded. The battle was far from finished, but the princess's strength had given him hope. They could make this work. They had to. The days after the dissident attack were filled with uncertainty. The damage to the settlement had been repaired quickly, but the tension remained. The princess and her guards had done their best to restore order, but the threat of more attacks loomed over them. Riley could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The delicate peace between humanity and the aliens had been shaken, and now it was up to both sides to decide how to move forward. The princess, though, seemed unshaken. Every time Riley saw her, she was calm and composed, as if the events of the past days hadn't affected her at all. But Riley knew better. He could see the weariness in her eyes, the toll that the constant responsibility of leadership had taken on her. One evening, as the sun set behind the alien city, Riley found himself standing alone on the balcony of the main building, looking out over the peaceful landscape. The stars were starting to appear in the sky, their light shimmering like diamonds on the horizon. It was a beautiful sight, and for a moment, Riley allowed himself to relax. The silence of the moment was soothing, a brief respite from the chaos that had filled the past few days. But then, a soft voice broke the silence. "You're troubled, human." Riley turned to see the princess standing behind him, her posture graceful and her face calm, but there was something in her eyes that told him she understood what he was feeling. "I guess I am," Riley said, his voice tinged with frustration. "I thought we were making progress, but now everything feels like it's falling apart." The princess stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You misunderstand. The peace between us is not fragile. It is strong, because it is based on understanding, not fear." Riley sighed. "I don't know. The attack, it made me realize how much we're still not prepared for. I don't want to see more violence. I want to see humanity and your people work together, not destroy each other." The princess tilted her head slightly, her eyes softening. "And that is why you are here, Commander. You have seen what lies beyond fear, and you want to bring that vision to the rest of your people. You have already taken the first step." Riley shook his head. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I can barely keep my own people in check, let alone an entire world." The princess smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You are doing more than you realize. You lead by example. That is what matters most. Now you must help us show the rest of your people that there is another way, another path beyond violence and destruction." Riley felt the weight of her words sink in. He had been focused on the problems, on the things that seemed impossible to fix. But the princess was right. They had come this far because they had chosen to understand each other, not to fight. Maybe he had been looking at it all wrong. "I don't know if I can convince everyone," Riley said quietly. "There are a lot of people out there who don't trust your people, who think we should fight instead of talk." The princess nodded slowly. "I know, but you have already shown them that humanity can change, that we do not have to remain bound by old ways, and you will show them again." Riley looked out over the horizon once more, the weight of the princess's words lingering in his mind. They weren't just fighting for peace, they were fighting for understanding. He realized that peace didn't just happen, it was built, one step at a time, with effort and courage. And it wasn't just about them. It was about everyone, their people, the princess's people, and the world they all shared. The sound of footsteps behind him interrupted his thoughts. Riley turned to see one of his officers approaching, her face serious. "Commander," she said, her voice urgent, "there's been another disturbance. One of the alien factions has been spotted near the border. They're trying to rally support." Riley's heart sank. It seemed like peace would always be just out of reach, no matter how hard they tried. But this was what they had to face. This was part of the fight for peace. The princess's expression hardened as she turned toward the officer. "We will not let this stand." Without a word, she walked toward the door, and Riley followed her, his mind racing. He had hoped that things could settle down, that the peace they had worked so hard for could take root. But the reality was that not everyone wanted peace. Some were too afraid, too angry to accept it. Riley and the princess, along with their respective teams, quickly made their way to the site of the disturbance. The alien faction had gathered at the border, shouting angrily and waving weapons. Riley could see the fear in their eyes, the same fear that had driven the dissidents to attack the settlement earlier. The princess stepped forward, her face calm but resolute. "We have come to speak with you," she called out, her voice strong and clear. The dissidents turned toward her, their expressions hard and distrustful. The leader of the faction stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. "You speak of peace, princess," he said, his voice full of contempt. "But what peace is there? When we are surrounded by humans? When they invade our world and take what is ours?" Riley felt the tension rise, but the princess did not flinch. She stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "You are wrong," she said softly. "Humans are not here to take. They are here to learn, to build, to create something new. We all share this world. It is not just mine or yours, it is ours. The dissidents were silent for a moment, and for the first time Riley saw doubt in their eyes. They were listening. But would it be enough? We cannot force you to see what you do not wish to, the princess continued, her voice gentle but firm. But we will not allow fear to divide us. We will not let violence win. The air was thick with tension as the dissidents stood there, unsure of what to do. Riley could feel the weight of the moment, knowing that the princess had put everything on the line. She was standing up to them, not with weapons or threats, but with the power of her words. And slowly the leader of the dissidents lowered his weapon, his gaze meeting the princess's. The next few days were tense, but hopeful. The dissidents had been captured and taken away for questioning, and the princess had worked tirelessly to ensure that the rest of her people understood the importance of peace. Her calm, unwavering leadership had helped stabilize the situation, and the settlement began to return to normal. But Riley knew the real challenge was still ahead, convincing both his people and the princess's people that a lasting peace was possible. He spent long hours in meetings, talking to the diplomats, the military leaders, and the scientific teams from both sides. He explained that while conflict seemed to be the easiest solution, it was also the most destructive. Peace, he argued, could only be achieved through understanding and cooperation. It would take time, but it was possible. The princess, though, still strong in her resolve, had become quieter. Riley had seen the toll the leadership had taken on her. She was no longer the confident leader who had first greeted him. She was now someone who carried the weight of an entire civilization on her shoulders. And yet, she never faltered. Every decision she made was for the good of her people, and even when doubts crept in, she kept moving forward. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Riley found himself on the balcony again, staring out at the stars. He wasn't sure what had drawn him here. Maybe it was the need to think, or maybe it was just a moment of peace in the midst of the chaos. The world around him had changed so quickly. It felt like only a few days ago that he had arrived, full of questions and uncertainty, and now, here he was, a part of something much bigger than himself. Looking for answers? A voice called out from behind him. Riley turned to see the princess standing there, her face serene, but her eyes revealing the same weariness he had noticed earlier. "Maybe," he replied. "I think I'm just trying to make sense of everything." The princess stepped closer, her presence calming. She seemed to understand his struggle, as if she had been carrying this weight for much longer than he had. "I, too, have wondered if this is the right path," she said softly. "There are so many uncertainties. I have led my people for many years, but this is different. It is not just my people's future that is at stake, but yours as well." Riley nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had come here to form an alliance, but now it felt like so much more. They weren't just trying to create a political agreement. They were trying to bridge two worlds, two ways of life that had never truly understood each other. "I know," Riley said. "It's hard to see how we can all come together when the past keeps pulling us apart. But we're still here. We've survived everything so far. And maybe that's a sign that we're meant to figure this out." The princess looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "You have a strange way of seeing things, human. You do not give up easily." Riley smiled, faintly. "Maybe that's what makes us human." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The stars above twinkled, filling the silence with a sense of peace that Riley didn't feel on the inside. He wanted to believe in the future, but doubts were always there, lurking just beneath the surface. "I wish I could promise you that all will be well," the princess said, breaking the silence. "But I cannot. The road ahead will be difficult, and there are those among my people who do not agree with what we are trying to build." Riley's heart sank. He had known the princess's people had their divisions, but hearing it out loud made it feel more real. "I've seen that," he admitted. "There are people in my world who feel the same way, who don't believe in peace, who don't trust your people." The princess's expression softened. "It is the way of the world, I suppose. Fear and distrust are easy to hold on to, but they are also the hardest to let go of." She paused for a moment, then added, "But there is something I believe. There is strength in unity. It is not about ignoring our differences, but embracing them, learning from them. Humanity has something my people lack, and we too have things to offer you." Riley looked at her, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "Your people have a strength that comes from within, from your very spirit. You fight for what you believe in, and though that can be dangerous, it also drives you forward. My people, on the other hand, have become too complacent, too safe. We have forgotten how to fight for what we believe in. Perhaps that is why you and I are standing here today, because we have something to teach each other." Riley felt a new sense of understanding flood through him. They weren't just from different worlds. They were from different perspectives, different histories. But maybe that was the key to their success. Learning from each other, helping each other grow. "I never thought of it like that," he said, softly. Maybe you're right." The princess nodded, a look of quiet determination on her face. "This is just the beginning, Commander. We will face more challenges, but we will face them together." Riley looked at her, his heart filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead would be difficult, but with the princess by his side, and with both of their peoples united, they could overcome anything. He knew that the road to peace would not be easy, but he also knew that it was the only path worth taking. "We can do this," Riley said, his voice full of conviction. The princess smiled, her eyes gleaming with the same hope he felt. "Yes, together we can." As they stood there, gazing out at the stars, Riley realized that this was the true beginning. They had crossed the hardest part, the part where doubt and fear threatened to tear them apart. Now they would build something new, something stronger than before, and together they would face whatever came next.